All right, well, you've just had a chance to practice sorting some data and forming groups of your own. Let's take a look at this primary example and see one possible way that we could have sorted this data. When I begin, I like to start by looking at my first data point, my e-reading, and sorting and filtering it from smallest to largest. We'll expand the selection. And now I can see my students who are below level on this first data measurement. From here, I've got to decide who I need in my first group. Now, I do need to consider the size of my group. We know that struggling students need to be in a group of 3 to 5, no more than 5 students. I'm going to start by looking at my first 4. As I look at these, I notice that they are all in the 380 range. And although there's a couple spots of proficiency over here, most of the students in most of the data points are still showing that they are below level, and their e-reading score shows that they are quite a bit lower than their classmates. So I am going to put these students in my first group. Then I look on to my next group. I'm going to look at Tate down through Quincy, as I notice that these students are all in the beginning 400 numbers. It looks like these students would probably make a good group. As I look across, there's many similar scores. And I'm going to put them into my second group. But as I look further down in my data, I notice that there's another student who probably would best fit in group 2. I'm going to consider Morgan for a moment. Morgan has a 31 in her early reading composite, very similar to the scores I see up here, and quite a bit lower than some of the other students who are right around her. Morgan also has a 6 in her sight words, which is actually even a little lower than some of her classmates. And she's also struggling over here in her last data point with sentence reading, and it's fairly consistent with what I'm seeing up here. Morgan seems to be a pretty good fit in group number 2. I'm going to add Morgan to that second group then. All right, then let's take a look at who I've got next. I'm going to look then at my remaining students who are below proficiency in their first assessment measure. Now, keep in mind, we've already put Morgan in this second group, so we don't have to consider her. The remaining students in this group seem to be a fairly good match. They've got scores that are similar. They're all in that 420 to early 430 range. They've got some mixes of proficiency with certain spots that are still a challenge. I'm going to go ahead and put those students together, starting to form my group 3. Now, as I look over here at my remaining students, I see one other student that potentially would be a better fit in group 3 than waiting until group 4, and that is Olga. What I noticed about Olga is that although she has a 439 here, there's a lot of red showing non-proficient areas across her early reading assessment. In fact, some of these scores are quite low, and I feel that if I would leave Olga to that top remaining group 4, it could pose quite a challenge for her. So instead, I'm going to add her into group 3. Now, I want to double check and make sure that I'm still staying within the measures that I know I need for students who are at or below grade level, because I do have quite a few students here who are still below. And this group 3 is still at 5 or below. Then I've got one group of students left, and these are my students who are at or above grade level. And keep in mind, I've already put Olga in a group, so the remaining students seem to have very similar assessment scores. They're green or proficient in almost all areas and would make a nice group together. Let's add these students to form group 4. Now, what we know with students who are at or above grade level is that it is okay to have 5 to 7 students in a group of at or above grade level students. And so in my group 4, I would have 7 students, still fitting that range. Then finally, I want to take a look one more time at the groups that I have just formed to make sure there's nothing that I am missing and need to consider. I would be thinking about things such as my English language learners, students who have special needs, and so on. As I look at these, I can make my final decision, and here's one possible scenario for the groups that I could have made with this data.